been a busy few days as I've been preparing an entirely new resource and way of delivering the third level training to our beloved baby priestesses who are coming on retreat, were coming on retreat next month, and now that of course is not happening, and so we've been working very hard behind the scenes of the Institute to create a new model, and that's been incredibly exciting and has resulted in a 100-page training document, and it's been taking up a lot of my time. But I have wanted to come back and share more support and insight at this critical time for this glorious community, and I've really loved the quality of your sharing, and I'm really grateful for that. And of course the last thing I shared was a meditation, and today I'm going to share a practice with you, one I'm kind of sharing everywhere right now because it's working very well for me, really as mind control, mental discipline practice. But before I do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the functioning of intuition. And you know, one of the things that we are often not aware of is that there is not intuition, there are intuitions, and that these intuitions represent the layers of our evolution, if you like. So we evolve through our intuition. We begin with an understanding of a very sort of rudimentary survival intuition, which we call gut instinct, and that is life protecting life, according to Caroline Myss. So it's very much just about our capacity to tune into the electromagnetic frequencies of those around us, which is our biology. There's nothing sort of spiritual about that. We're just picking up information from each other and the atmosphere all of the time because of the makeup of our biology. And very often, this is sort of where we stop in terms of our evolution, and we will consider our gut instinct. You know, people will say, trust your gut, and these sorts of conversations or these ideas around intuition really demonstrate to me how basic our understanding is and how unsophisticated our understanding is, which is not our fault. It's not something that's widely taught or understood. But what is very, very clear is this is a form of intuition that even at this level we are suspicious of, and we consider it spiritual or outrageous or really out there, and that the idea that you would trust something other than your mind to discern whether a decision is right or wrong seems to be so sort of antithetical to the world that we shut that down. We shut down our survival intuition, and you can look at the work of Joe Dispenza to understand how we do that, but we do it through, in very briefly, through body-mind addiction, where we will become so addicted to living in the stress hormones of fight or flight that we actually can't discern what our gut is saying, even at this most basic and rudimentary level of our intuition. And so we become a stranger to ourselves, and we make choices that are against life, that go against our very survival. And we're taught to do this through a process of domestication, where we're taught to be polite women and men, but very much about sort of a conforming and being nice and being good. And these ideas are how we shut down our very rudimentary but very powerful survival intuition. So I don't sort of want to go too far into all of them, but to talk about surrender intuition, I kind of need to give you a bit of an understanding of these other layers. And the next layer is the layer that we are probably at as a civilization, especially those who are on the path of awakening. We are at this level of what I call communion intuition. And it's the idea that we recognize that we're in a conversation with a greater power. So we recognize that there is this inherent interconnectedness, there's this infinite consciousness that we're part of. We may not use those words, we might call it God or source or spirit or the divine matrix, whatever language you use. And that if we focus our attention, perhaps through our devotional practices, perhaps through just, you know, having a really good capacity to be mindful or to hold a mental image with clarity, we can actually start to manufacture a reality, if you like. So we can start to see that with a little bit of control, that conversation, that communion between us and this greater power is not a one-way street. There's actually something or someone listening, and we can see that we are rewarded if we are able to stay focused upon what we desire for long enough. And this is where the ideas of vision boards and creating gratitude lists and really, holding a very powerful intention for what we want our lives to look like And we see that sometimes come to pass, and even if it doesn't come to pass in the way we were expecting, we can see that there's a relationship, there's a conversation going on. Now, all of this sounds really good, and it is good. It is good, but it is also simply a stage of our evolution, and it is very much based on walking between two worlds, the 3D and the 5D. It's a stage of evolution in our spiritual awakening, and it's a stage of evolution in our intuition, because we all have experienced that if you go in pursuit of your intuition, your awakening journey will continue to expand. You cannot pursue the development of your intuition and not see the development of your spiritual nature. They are one and the same. Intuition is the language of that of the soul. So it is a really good thing that we have communion intuition, because we're recognizing that we're more sophisticated than just this survival gut rudimentary intuition, and that we're recognizing that we have a power. We may not understand the nature of that power, and we don't at this stage, but we recognize that there is a capacity for us to use our mind and to use our feeling states when we get a bit more sophisticated to actually cultivate a life that we want to be living. Now, when we sort of get into the latter stages of communion intuition, we recognize that what is really manufacturing or manifesting our reality is the feeling state. It is the vibration. It's nothing to do with the vision board. It's nothing to do with the mental list or the written list of what we want. It's about cultivating a feeling that is the prayer that the cosmos or God mind responds to. And this is really the sophisticated, most refined end of communion intuition. And it's an important step in our evolution, because we may then start to surrender our ideas of how things should look, because what we realize we are truly seeking is the feeling of how we want our lives to be. And this is where we arrive at surrender intuition. Now, surrender intuition is really arms wide open, holding nothing back, saying, okay, God, I'm yours, use me. My life is in service to the greater good. I have put down all my agendas on how I think my life should look. I've put down this idea that there's a reward system for, me being a good spiritual person, and me doing my devotion, and me showing up to my spiritual practices, or being nice to people, or adopting puppies. I'm no longer believing that there is this kind of karmic reward system, and that I am supposed to get good things if I show up to God, and if I don't get good things, then I withdraw my affection from God. And now I recognize that even though I do not always understand the events of my life and the events of the world around me, I trust, I surrender, I throw my arms wide open. I'm here as your servant. Humbly, let me be your hands and feet in the world. And then your intuition has got the clearest possible channel, because you don't then argue with what you hear. So even at co-creation intuition, we are arguing to an extent with God, because if things are received into us, if guidance is received into us, which is a misnomer, it's not into us, it's just coming from us, our intuition is part of what we are, we will resist and we'll hold back from God's instructions, because we're still holding a perception of how our life should look. And if it doesn't match that, we can get ourselves turned all around and upside down, and we might even lose faith, because what we thought we were going to get out of pursuing our path, and many people use spiritual tools to try to manifest what they believe they should be getting. Okay, so we turn up to our spirituality and to our practices, and maybe even our yoga and our green juices and our meditation and our mindfulness and all of that stuff, with this idea that if we do that, we're going to be somehow rewarded. Now, this is maybe not something you're comfortable with hearing, but it is true, and it is a shadow side of almost like a black magic use of spiritual tools to try to coerce or manipulate the cosmos, the infinite intelligence, into meeting our egoic needs. Now, that might all sound like I'm being pretty dismissive of communion intuition, what Caroline Myss calls co-creative intuition, but I'm not, because it is a stage in our development, and we can't know what when we are not ready to know things as we're ready to know them. And what I'm really excited about sharing with you about surrender intuition is that, when you get to that phase where you are ready to put down your agenda, your ego's agenda, of what you think you should get in return for showing up to your devotion, that's when life starts to become truly a blessing, and all of your needs are met in abundance. Now, I don't mean your specific ego needs of this much money, this kind of book contract, this many people following me, this many people on my Instagram account. I mean, your soul's needs are met. And whether you know it or not, your attempts to get your 3D needs met were only ever an attempt to get your soul needs met. So when your soul needs are met, all of your ideas of a well-lived life, of a successful life, fall away. And this is really the purpose of us committing to awakening our intuition. It is not so that we get more able to guess people's futures, and I use that word guess quite intentionally, or to, be able to predict what's going to happen with COVID-19, or to be able to, download information about other people, but rather that we get closer to the truth that all is one, and I am one with the one mind. The very end point of intuition is that there is no need for intuition, and surrender intuition is a step on that path. Surrender intuition is the absolute lack of resistance. It is defenselessness. There is nothing that could happen in my life that I would consider has gone wrong. And this is why I need to talk to you about surrender intuition today. There's a very good chance that if you're like me and the majority of the planet, you are having to put down, either graciously or forcibly, an agenda for how you think your life should look right now, because that life has been taken away. And if you're following the guidelines of most of the governments in the world, and you're doing the responsible thing for your communities, there's a very good chance that your pleasure and your joy and all of those kind of ways that we are able to kind of nourish ourselves in the world, connection with others in person, and sitting at a cafe and eating good food, and being, in a kind of thriving community. I live in a city because I love the buzz of having people around me. There's a good chance that a lot of those things have been taken from you, as well as the things that might seem silly, but over the course of time might become really challenging to be without. And, even to be in a world where people we love might be losing work and money and not sure how they're going to live, and all of this uncertainty, it's very hard to think that all of this is right and in accordance with the highest good of all. But that is what surrender intuition is about. It's really defenselessness. I am defensive before you, dear God, and I am not holding an agenda for even the idea that I should have economic certainty or job security or food security or anything, that my children should have a place to go to school, that my elderly parents should have a bed in an ICU should they need it. I put down all of these ideas of my perception of right or wrong. I surrender. And I think what we're being invited to do right now is a radical trust exercise, as I've said, but it is also a choiceless path right now. There is nothing but surrender. I mean, you can try and force a sense of control on your world by, creating really rigorous homeschooling for your kids, and trying to create, really intense programs of your behavior and everyone else's behavior so that you feel safe. But it's still an illusion. We don't know how far down the rabbit hole we're going to go with all of this. And the idea that, and there's nothing wrong with having order. There's nothing wrong with that. What I'm talking about is simply where we may be trying to create a sense of order, maybe prematurely, maybe not, but we're trying to force our control over a situation that feels like it's out of our control because we hate being out of control. So there's a difference there between having a good structure and having a good system in place to keep your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health working. But the reality is we don't have control right now. And we don't really know why this is happening. And it doesn't matter how many conspiracy theories you Google, and it doesn't matter how much you try to wrestle back a sense of control by reading everything and following every news broadcast and listening to every document that every doctor puts out. We are still in an absolute space of the void. Everything we know to be true is falling away, and the structures that we thought were unbreakable are falling down around us. And if we don't surrender right now, we will literally tear ourselves apart because we are fighting reality. So this surrender is radical acceptance. That's the first stage of surrender. And it is only in that you will begin to receive the most powerful form of intuition there is, which is surrender intuition. which is a flow state, by the way. It is not I tune into my intuition to ask a question, I tune out of my intuition. You are your intuition, and your intuition is you, and you flow in that state of communion with your intuitive intelligence at all times. There's no coming in and going out again when you want to manipulate God to give you a particular answer. You live in a state of flow, and when you step out of that state of flow because of fear, you feel that, and you course correct, if you're one of my priestesses, by using your tools, and if not, you'll have your own fear meeting tools to bring you back into that balanced state. And that's the state that you live in with surrender intuition. There are no trinkets and superstitions. There's no cards to draw. There's no pendulums to swing. There's no one to ask. There's nothing except for, am I congruent with truth? And that is a flow state. And you will know it by the way it feels to inhabit that state. And we're moving beyond, I'm going to tune in and ask God if I should marry that boy, or if I should buy that house, or if I should, invest in toilet paper stocks right now. We're not trying to organize the dream, because when we're in surrender intuition, we have moved beyond the belief that 3D reality is the highest reality. And instead we are learning. Sometimes, it works for half an hour at a time, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes we could do it for a whole day. We're learning to privilege our non-local, non-dominant reality, the subtle realms, the subtle reality, the quantum realm, prior to the 3D, because 3D is secondary to matter. So consciousness precedes matter. 3D is secondary to consciousness. Consciousness precedes matter. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by this. If it feels like too much to receive intellectually, just feel into it in your heart. And then we're going to finish with a practice that I hope very much will support you to stay out of the mind and in the heart. The biggest thing about this time is that we cannot intellectualize our way through it. It's totally unknown. There's no predictions that can be accurate because we haven't been here before. We are in a state of absolute uncertainty, and we can find our peace within that if we're willing to practice surrender intuition. It's really the task that we've been assigned by God at this time is to move away from this idea that we ever had control in the first place. And that's why I'm a little bit derisive of communion intuition, because ultimately its shadow side is that it makes us think that we have control and authority over everything, and that if we just want something enough, and we law of attraction it enough, and we focus on it enough, we will get it. And regardless of what happens to the rest of the planet, regardless of whether our demands from God are going to throw Mother Nature out of balance, regardless of the health of the whole organism, which is all human consciousness, we are not here on our own. And yet, paradoxically, there's only one of us here. So when our actions happen in isolation, and when we're trying to get our vision board met, our needs met from that egoic place, we are often acting against the health of the collective. And that's what we see in our world right now. There is such massive imbalance in our economic systems, in our climate emergency. There is simply no way that we have been thinking about the collective good. We have been largely acting in isolation and using our spiritual tools to act in isolation to get our isolated needs met, and thinking that we were going to get away with that. Like, we're breaking the law. We're breaking the 3 immutable laws, the first 2 being the law of mentalism, all is one, and the second being as within, so without. How is it possible that we would not need a course correction when we have been using our spirituality, our intuition, our capacity to co-create effectively? It's strong wording, but for black magic, because we've been manipulating rather than thinking about or feeling into how do my actions contribute to the greater good. Now, this is strong stuff, but I don't know if you've noticed, we're in a fairly radical time. And if I'm not willing to speak this to you now, when would I? So I am very, very suspicious of a world built on the law of attraction, a world built on manifestation for your individual gain. I'm very suspicious of all of that, and I have long been suspicious of the use of spirituality to get 3D needs met, because it doesn't make any sense, because the dream is the nightmare that we inhabit. So why would God or source or spirit be invested in helping us arrange furniture in a burning building. Ultimately, this Earth School is, from my understanding, a consciousness experiment, and we've been given free rein to create whatever we want, and that's what this consciousness experiment has been. And now we're sort of being lovingly shown that our consciousness experiment, in terms of getting the ego's needs met and creating an isolation, and actively, like a cancer cell in the body, if all the cancer cells are acting in or if all the cells are acting in isolation, you create an unlivable organism. There is simply no way that life can be sustained there, and that is what we've done up to now with our spiritual tools. We've kept trying to manipulate energy to give us what our ego wants, rather than letting our intuition evolve us to the point of surrender intuition, where we recognize we don't actually want those things at a soul level. Our ego wants those things to distract us from the fact that we're not meeting our soul's needs. So that's a lot. It's a lot, and I understand that, but I feel you're ready for this, and I want to really honor the integrity of this group, and to be able to share this with you in this way feels like a great privilege. Surrender intuition is a practice. It's an embodied practice. It is not an intellectual pursuit. You cannot think your way into surrender intuition. Surrender and trust are two sides of the same coin, and they require embodied devotional practice. Even if for weeks and weeks and months and months and months you do the devotional practices, getting no closer to understanding what Ricky is talking about when she says surrender intuition, one day it will fall into place if you're willing to surrender the mind to the heart and bow to the intelligence of the heart. I was just taken on a quite remarkable guided journey with Bree Jones, one of the postgraduate priestesses and a lead mentor in the third level program. And it was just a truly remarkable experience. And I bow to that woman. Her work is incredible. But she took us on a journey to meet the wild woman. And in one phase of the journey, we're handed or receive an understanding of what our provocation is to the world. What do we need to be saying to the world right now? And I received an insight, and I want to just clarify, when I say receive, I'm receiving from within. There is no out, there is no in, there is only all. But that English language lets us down when we're trying to talk about the quantum nature of reality. But the information that I received was, you gilded your cages with gold and thought you had brought your freedom. You gilded your cages with gold and thought that you had bought your freedom. And to me, this is a metaphor for what we've been doing with our spiritual tools. We've been using our spiritual tools rather than for awakening. We've been locked in cages. We're in prisons of our own making. We're in this nightmare that we've manufactured on earth. And we've painted them with all the luxuries that we could possibly manufacture through our law of attraction and our, using all of these tools to get our ego's needs met, to get a bigger house, bigger TV, more stuff, a partner, and a sense of security in a dream, which is just a paradox in itself. And now we're looking around and realizing that we are all still in the cages, no matter how pretty we made them. And this is where surrender intuition is leading us. It's time to truly understand what freedom is, and freedom never has been about how many holidays do I get to go on a year, or how many spiritual books do I buy, or how many programs do I invest in, or how many things I can give to my kids, or how much private education I can afford. These are the nightmares that we have substituted for our soul's longing. And surrender intuition is asking us now to recognize that those things were never ever going to meet our needs. And I just really feel so strongly that this is our time to see how deep are we willing to go to get past. And it's going to take a while, because these things are addictions to us. Are we willing to go beyond our addictions, our ego's addictions, to get those needs met, those things that feel like needs but never were and will never satisfy our longing? And it doesn't matter how many you get. And every rich, wealthy person who's ever made it to the top of the pile has told you the things that you're seeking will not bring you happiness. And yet we still think that if we get all our physical security met, that somehow we're going to find what we want. And it is not okay anymore for us to sit in that paradigm. And the world is literally melting away all of the illusion. Carly was in our Wild Woman meditation this morning with Brie, or this afternoon, not surprisingly. And Kali is the Hindu goddess of destruction and also of creation, but very rarely in the way that we want. And it is no doubt, Kali's deep fire work, and we invoke her name with such reverence and awe, and we honor her deeply when we invoke her name, that is helping us to see through the illusion of what we thought we could control about a dream. You cannot control a dream. You cannot manipulate a dream. You might be able to do it temporarily, but ultimately the dream will win. And yes, Michelle, this is the Matrix. This is, the Matrix is based on ancient sacred texts. Plato talked about the cave, that we're all chained inside the cave, watching things happen on a screen. And then one day, one of us looks out the cave entry and sees sunlight and is like, whoa, what is that? And we're waking up to the truth that we are in these cages of this level of consciousness that we've been at, thinking that manifesting, our perfect life partner is why we've been given a soul and why we've been given an opportunity to be on Earth School. And I really just want us to really come to the truth now. If we're able to recognize that surrender intuition is the evolution, the next step now, to let go of the belief that intuition is out there, that there's something out there trying to give us information, and instead surrender to within, to the God self within. I am that. I am that. I am. And so I'm just going to conclude today. If you were with me in my I've just been chanting this everywhere, actually. I'm going to chant for you a mantra that I learned recently from Siam Pascal, which is one of the great Maha mantras. There's two Maha mantras. The Gayatri mantra, which is life and Shakti and sun and joy, and it's very buoyant. And then there is the Shiva mantra, Maha mantra, which is the Mrtyunjaya mantra. Forgive my pronunciation, I'm still learning it. And this is death. This is the death of the old self, death to the ego. It's the self united with God, free from samsaric longing. And samsara is the dream. Samsara is the illusion that we've bought ourselves. We've invested in this dream thinking it's the real deal, wondering where nirvana is, and yet we keep gilding the cages that we're in. So the reason I'm sharing this with you now is because even though I've now talked on this for an hour, you cannot get there through the mind. You cannot get to surrender intuition through the activity of your mind. It's simply not possible. We can use the mind to guide us to truth, but we must ultimately embody. And so mantra is a form of mental discipline and a capacity to have non-attachment to form. And if we chant mantra when our fear rises, we are shutting down that fear program, and we're instead running a program that has been uttered billions and billions of times. And in that frequency, we get carried along. We don't have to, how do I think my way out of this? How do I think my way out of my fear right now? You probably can't, because your mind is the cause of the fear. So let's surrender to a higher power. So I'm going to chant this 6 times. Okay. And if you know it, please join me. And if you don't, you can join in if you pick it up. And if not, then you can just listen and let the vibration move you. Okay. So it's, mantra is sound. Sound is frequency. Frequency is what ultimately we want to cultivate in order to move beyond the dream, beyond the 3D, to access the 5D. My nose is very rosy. I'm quite warm now. And when I talk about things that I care about very deeply, my body temperature tends to go up. So forgive me. I've got a Rudolph nose. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to close down your eyes if you're safe to do so. And if not, just resting your gaze at a point in front of you. Taking a deep breath in and filling the belly as much as possible, holding at the top of the inhalation, and then exhaling out through the mouth with an audible sigh, letting go of all the effort required to bring you to this moment in your day. Doing that 2 more times in your own rhythm, really encouraging the breath retention at the top of the inhalation for as long as feels comfortable for you. You want to be able to exhale without a gasp, but the longer you can hold it, the longer you are able to have that exchange in the body for fresh oxygenated blood to move around. And give the intention now just to receive this sound frequency in accordance with your own highest good, knowing that whenever we chant these ancient Sanskrit words, we are tuning into a frequency that carries with it such potency and such power. And I'm going to begin. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Triambakam Yujamahe Sugandhim Pushtavaranam Uvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityo Mukshamamritat. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Just allow the vibration to move through your cells, aligning you to the frequency of that most sacred sound. And in so doing, opening you to the possibility of understanding, not through the mind, but through your being, what surrender intuition is. When you're ready, simply bringing your hands to prayer position over your heart and bowing your head to the wisdom of your heart's intuitive intelligence. And when you're ready, and only when you're ready, blinking open your eyes. Thank you, thank you, thank you for letting me share with you. I understand these are fierce teachings, and I may be potentially taking away from you some really beloved ideas of what spiritual success is and what intuition is, and the comforts of this path. And maybe right now you're like, I need some comforts, Ricky, you got to leave me with something. But I guarantee you, if you're willing to go where this work is inviting you to go, all the desire for comfort will dissolve, and the fierce devotion will bring you into union of self with self. And that there is nothing in the dream that can match that. And there's nothing in the dream that you will desire once you've experienced that, even for but a moment. And that is my work, is to help you recognize, to help me recognize that I have gilded my cage with gold, and I thought I bought my freedom. And now I am aware, and I will continue to increase my awareness and continue to walk the path towards truth, of non-dualism, of non-attachment, and of waking up to the dream. And the world is supporting us to do that right now. And it is our task to take our discomfort and whatever suffering we're experiencing, and to see what is possible for us now. Is it possible to create a new paradigm together if we're willing to get beyond the communion, co-creation, manifestation lie that we've been told is spiritual success, and to get down on our hands and knees before God and say, use me. I'm here in service to the greater good. And that is definitely my intention. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is my privilege, as always, to serve you. And if you have any questions or want to know more, just comment here and I'll share it with you. Have a beautiful day.